Hey there YouTube, welcome back to a little bit of a special black powder update today. I've finished my first KGL really quickly actually. I think it was the same night that I finished my 8th KGL. I came into my painting room quite late at night, sort of like 9 or 10 o'clock. I normally don't paint around that sort of late into the evening, but for some reason I just suddenly had an itch to start on these guys. I normally take a few days rest after I finish a battalion, but for some reason I just had an inkling to do something, and I mean all I really did was just stick them to their bases, ready for priming, and the next day I was planning on, maybe I'll just prime them up and then I'll start them tomorrow. So, but things happened, and I ended up doing a 4-hour painting session after priming them and letting them dry. So this was like I primed them in the morning, and I suppose it was maybe like early out, just after lunch perhaps. I decided to start, and again I was going in my batches of 9, and obviously some of these guys were already had base colours on, and obviously there were the 4 95th that were just sort of sitting around with no real use really. So obviously I had those guys carved off their stands and ready to go as well. So they actually didn't need much doing to them at all. They literally just needed some strapping, changing colour of some strapping, and the shoulder harness on their muskets or their rifles needed changing from white to black, and just a little bit of a sort of general tidy up, and getting rid of the white lines on their facings to complete black. There really wasn't much to do on those guys at all. So already you could say that with very minimal effort, you already had 4 guys ready to go. And then I had my bugler and my sergeant. They already had their base colours on, so that helped as well. And then I started on them, and I was just cracking them out. I think I finished the first 9 by lunchtime the next day. And we're talking maybe, I don't know, maybe a 4 or 5 hour painting session, including doing some work on them in the evening. I think I slapped on the base colours the same day that I primed them on the first 9. And I also, because I had some leftover paint, I also had done the trousers and the field jackets on 3 or 4 of the figures that would have been from the second batch as well. And then literally, I think they took me a total of 3 days, I think, to actually complete these guys. And I did do 1 day of an absolutely mammoth session where not only did I have a massive sort of 6 or 7 hour painting session from 10 o'clock until about 10. Yeah, I think I did like 5 hours during the day, and then I actually came back in the evening and I did another sort of 2 or 3 hours, and that basically more or less finished the second batch of 9, and then literally I had 6 left, and I cracked those guys off in about 3 hours, I think. They really did paint up really quick, and obviously included in that were obviously the guys that were already painted, but they're done now. I'm very, very happy with them. I'd say that the only thing I'm not too happy about is this one particular stand of skirmishers here, that I kind of I went to kind of to base them, and I thought, well, I kind of want, because all these guys are kind of, 3 of them are sort of like prone or laying on their side. I don't really want to split them up. I want to try and get all those guys on one base. But I had trouble with the guys that were laying on the sides because they took up a lot of space on the stand. So at one point I was even going to go for just 3 of them on the base, and I thought, well, no, that doesn't match up with the other bases. So in the end, and then we'll bring these guys out as I start to sort of show you them. As you can see, the final base ended up like this, and I'm really not a massive fan of these 2 guys in the same position, sticking off to the side. But then I suppose it's not, it's probably not uncommon that if 2 guys started loading at the same time, that at some point during that they'd actually be more or less doing the same thing at the same time. And maybe that just took that sort of that picture at that particular time where they're both more or less doing the same thing. But as you can see, we've got the used up figures from my original Warlord 95th box, along with one of the plastics from the Perry box. And so like I look at them and I think, well, one minute I don't like them, and the next minute they don't actually look too bad. But I'm glad to have used these guys because I'm not a big fan of leaving metal guys around. You can actually see that I've actually forgot to dust these guys off, because the sort of the forest basing that I use for these guys I think it has like real dirt in it, and when you are putting it on, you basically cover the figures in sort of dirt basically. And it's what I normally do is when they're sort of dry, I just go in with a paintbrush and sort of dust them off. And obviously in this case, these guys were obviously forgotten. But if I just grab a paintbrush now, then you can see that this sort of dirty mud will just literally dust away, because that's literally what it is. It's just basically like mud basically. So yeah, that cleans those guys up. Yeah, so that is the first base, and one of the bases of one of the rifle companies. Maybe not the best thing in the world, but the thing that I did like about it in the end was that it still actually matches up with all my other bases. It doesn't like stick off to the side or stick off at an angle. It actually meets up with the other bases flush. And as you can see, I made sure that there was that straight line there and nothing actually protruded over it. So in fact, when you match it up to another stand, even though there's a little bit protruding over, it doesn't actually affect the stand next to it or the stand in front of it. So that is the first stand, one of the rifle companies. And next up we'll go for the other rifle company, because this again is made up of primarily the guys that were already done. As you can see, we've got 3 of those guys on this base, and one of the again outstanding leftover 95th. And I did actually do shaker conversions on all of the 95th guys that were left, because they all had stovepipe shakos, and theoretically I could have left them, but I didn't really want to. And there's actually quite a lot of fussing around trying to get the shakos to fit properly on a lot of them. But this guy was one of the ones that was actually really easy to do. It was the ones that were laying down that I had a lot of problems with. But yeah, so not much work actually going into this particular stand, because these 3 here were more or less already done. Like I say, all I had to do really was paint a couple of straps black, and I don't think there's even, is there a guy? There's one guy with a KGL blue identification cover on his backpack, with this one here, although not that it's that easy to tell the truth in this light. So that is the second rifle company. because as we know, these light companies don't have grenadiers and light. They have rifle companies as the two flank companies. And here we have the first stand of musket armed troops, and you can see that there's a mixture here of warlord and I believe one front rank in this particular batch. Actually, there's two. So this one and this one are front rank, and the two at the back are warlord. You can see that I decided to use one of the bandaged heads just to sort of make a change. So here we have a guy who's got some sort of forehead injury or a cut above his eye, and the way it's been bandaged, it's obviously difficult to try and give it good bandaging, you know, some good pressure on it without actually covering over the eye a little bit. So this guy is probably looking out of one eye, but he's obviously not blind, so hopefully in maybe a day or two the bandage can be lightened up and he can have his full sight back. But yeah, that's the stand of normal musket armed infantry. So that's those guys. And then we have another stand of infantry. These guys are all... Are they all? Yes, they're all front rank, these guys. So I had some really good use out of my my front rank battalion. And there's parts of them in 3 of my KGL battalions. So they really had good use. Next up we'll go for the sergeant stand. Obviously the way that these guys are set up is a little bit different to how I normally set up a line infantry. The sergeant is obviously still where he normally goes. The front rank, not front rank, I believe there's one front rank on here, or is there? Yeah, I think this guy's front rank. Yes, he is. One front rank, 2 warlord, and a Perry's sergeant. Now this sergeant is actually from the 2nd KGL, and he does have the sort of the thing around his hat, but I've done it so that it's just done in dark green, so it doesn't stand out too much. And you know, maybe there's some sort of reason why he's there, but maybe he's a fill-in. Maybe their regular sergeant got killed and they just borrowed one from a neighbouring, the neighbouring 2nd, or maybe this guy transferred from the 2nd and he just hasn't had time to remove the ribbon from his hat to make it regulation. Obviously, a lot of these guys have got shaker covers on, so they haven't got their pom-poms or their feathers, and obviously they have exactly the same rifle badge as the 95th and other light units. So there's the sergeant's unit, and then finally the command stand. Now, if you remember me saying the main difference between these guys and the 2nd is the fact that the officers are wearing basically normal officer gear and not rifle jackets. The only main difference is that they actually have, they don't have epaulets like that. They actually have like chainmail epaulets, but that's the only real difference between them. So I decided to go with these 2 front rank officers, which are actually, I mean, I know they have slightly different helmet insignia or Shako insignia because obviously they're not destined to be light, but sometimes you have to make a little bit of allowance because you know, you can't get a figure with a rifle Shako in this particular garb. And of course the bugler, who again is from the 2nd KGL command pack, because you actually get 2 buglers and 2 sergeants in that. And then we have a front rank infantryman over here, and obviously these 2 officers are also front rank, and they came from my my British command pack that I've had for a long time. And initially these guys were going to be part of the one of my KGL units, the foot infantry, but of course they ended up being drafted into the 1st KGL. I think they look pretty cool along with it. So that, and of course the bugler with his red facings, and that is a closer look at those guys. And now I thought, I am planning on doing a sort of a full video of the entire division, and I'm going to do it in a little bit more detail than I did my British update. So I'm going to sort of focus in on the units and maybe give a bit of blurb about them if something is outstanding. But in this particular case, I'm actually going to bring in the rest of the KGL, the 2nd KGL battalion, to show you what these guys look like complete. So as you can see, I'm bringing in the 2nd. So let's just bring it back a little bit. As you can see, I'm on my painting desk again. So we'll bring in the 2nd. So there you go. So there's the 1st and the 2nd together. And for some reason my tripod's not sitting flush. Actually, I'm just going to... I've just figured out why it's not sitting flush. It's because I've not got it fully extended. And I didn't have it locked. There we go, that's better. So now I will bring in the 2 units of line. So here we have, I believe, is the 5th. These guys, of course, are all made up out of front rank. And one little modification I did was I actually changed the sapper, which is actually a proper sapper figure. This one, it's actually a Perry's, I believe, or is it? I believe it is a Perry's. Yeah. I changed the colour of his apron to that cork brown to match in with my other one, because I thought it was a really cool colour. And I think it came out looking really cool, actually. Such a simple, no, I literally just painted it camo black brown. This is how I used to do my World War II Italians belts and webbing. Was I'd lay down a base colour of camo black brown, and then I'd paint cork brown over it, and then I'd give it a wash of either dark tone or Agrax earth wash. I think dark tone actually makes it look better. But yeah, so just a little modification there, just to make them a little bit more uniform. So that's something else I did, modifications wise. Then we have the rest of that battalion. There, and then finally the 8th. There's such a difference in weight between the 8th and the 5th. I mean, even the lights are which are all front rank as well. They weigh so much more than the warlord. The units that are made up of like three warlord figures. Command. And sergeant, and I went back and I basically said to myself, now I've completed the brigade, what am I going to use for a brigade commander? Because for some reason British brigade commanders, I'm really lacking them. I mean, I literally just have enough to cover the 3 battalions of the 3rd Infantry Division. Now, if you remember back, the figure that I originally destined to be my cavalry brigade commander, I basically made this guy become the KGL brigade commander. So this guy here resurfaces now as the KGL commander, who is a chap called Lieutenant Colonel Omptida. I thought this figure would actually make quite a good KGL commander, because he did actually already have blue facings just by fluke. So I thought, well, the job's already done, so I'll just rebrand him and I'll actually get an actual more appropriate cavalry brigade commander for the cavalry, because again my British cavalry are lacking quite a bit in comparison to my French, and I've got to admit, even my French are lacking in brigade commander. Well, I mean, I have actually got more brigade commanders for my French than my British, because I actually picked up the Perry's pack. And don't get me wrong, I do like the look of the British Perry's pack of colonels, and I really, really want to get them. But the only figure that I really don't like is the fact that you get a Highland officer in there. I really don't have any plans to collect any Highland regiments. And although I suppose you could use him as an accompanying figure on another colonel's base, because obviously adjutants and staff officers are made up of all sorts of divisions and battalions, colonels. I thought perhaps you could use them for something like that, but maybe one day I'll actually get around to getting them and upgrading them from sort of the warlord figures, because I believe this guy's from the Peninsula pack, so he's a little bit out of date, but I do think he makes quite a good brigade commander for this unit. And like I say, he already had the blue facing, so he's kind of fit in perfect. So that is a look at the 2nd KGL brigade. I think they look pretty cool. Zoom in a little bit. And at some point over the next week probably, I may well do a complete 3rd Infantry Division overview. Now, I was looking over my paperwork, and there are a few discrepancies, minor discrepancies. So here we have the which are basically covered from the book. So basically, if we go down the list, so I have a figure for the division commander. Then we go into the 5th British Brigade, and I have all of these units here, along with a brigade commander. Then we go into the KGL Brigade, which of course you've just seen, so obviously I've got all those guys. And then we have the Hanoverians, and I've got the 4 main battalions, and the only thing that I haven't got, and I wasn't really going to collect them, was the 2 companies of Jaegers, like I was saying at the start. Now, the only discrepancy I found is that in the artillery, the divisional artillery, I only have 1 battery of 9-pounders, although I think actually, yes, they got 9-pounders, a battery of 9-pounders and 1 howitzer. So theoretically, I could, just by doing a little bit of swapping around, make up practically those 2 battalions, because I have 1 battery of 9-pounders and I have 1 artillery gun done up as a howitzer. So if I use 1 9-pounder and 1 howitzer as a battery, that means that if I pick up 1 howitzer for my British, which I have actually got plans to do anyway, I'll be able to actually properly sort out that artillery, because my artillery at the moment is 2 battalions of, or 2 batteries of 6-pounders and one battery of 9-pounders. Okay, so I guess that's the end of this video. Now, something I was thinking of doing, instead of doing like perhaps an entire army update, British Army update, as in having all the figures out at once, perhaps I'll do them by brigade. That might be a little bit different and easier to do, and then I'll just actually, I want to sort of go into more detail on them than I did when I did my initial British Army update last year, where I kind of had them all up on the table, and it was difficult to sort of focus in on particular units because there wasn't really room for them all to be spread out and sort of bring the camera in on them. So perhaps I'll do that. And even if I do them all in one video, one long video, I could still focus in on the units a lot better than if I just were to set it all up and sort of fly the camera by them. So that's probably what I'm going to do. Obviously I've been watching all your videos. I think I've had a couple of new subscribers, so welcome to those chaps. I hope you enjoy the content. A lot of people have been asking me to do another battle report, and I quite agree with you. I really want to try and do one myself, but I do have limitations, both with the amount of stuff that I can carry. I have to basically carry my stuff from here, which is my painting room, into my living room where my table is, and then I also have to, obviously, I'm not the best of people at walking anyway, but walking with carrying something at the same time, I'm even worse at. I'm really trying my hardest to try and get somebody in to help me do it. Whether I actually play the game against them and they sort of help out holding the camera, or whether they just do all the camera work and I actually just play the game myself. There's lots of options. I'm sort of thinking through them, and I do promise that I will definitely get a battle report up in the near future. It's just trying to work out how to do it, and the other thing, of course, is it's very difficult to try and film a battle report when you're on your own. Like I say, I have trouble. Obviously trouble walking, but I also have trouble sitting down and standing up, and I can't stand up for that long a period of time, so I'm always having to sit down all the time and sit back up and sit back down, and the reality of it is that a battle report is probably going to take me just a couple of days of maybe 3 or 4 hour sessions to actually even complete the game, and then of course you're left with a lot of clips of sort of 5 or 10 minute clips that you have to go in and edit, and I really did botch up my editing last time. It was the first time I'd really sort of handled that length of film in multiple, sort of 10 or 20 or maybe even 30 clips, and it was a real pain to actually try and to link it up together, and I think in the end it was basically too big and I had to cut it down, and then somehow it left like about 25 minutes of the previous video somehow being added to like the second part when it shouldn't have really been there, and I think that sort of affected people actually watching the second part and actually finishing off the actual battle report itself. So yeah, I mean, there's lots of things that I need to consider and think about, but I definitely want to. I mean, I'm absolutely itching to get some of these guys on the table and have a battle. Like I say, I'll probably go for like a fairly small battle at first, maybe sort of like brigade size, and I really do want to use Leon's rules. A, to obviously get used to them, and B, I do actually think it's a really good set of rules. I particularly like the combat and the casualty the casualties are handled. I like the idea of a battalion actually taking casualties and losing stands, as opposed to the sort of black powder way of just putting like casualty markers on them. But yeah, so lots of things to think about. But at the same time, I'm very happy to have finished these guys. And like I say, all but one cannon battery. I have actually fully completed this battalion, and you know, theoretically I could just slap in some 6-pounders because I do actually have enough artillery, but just in this particular case not the right calibre. So this is the end of that. The end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I've waffled on a bit. It's like a 30-minute video. Yeah, look forward to or look out for me starting to do my overview of my British. I probably will include the guest units and the cavalry anyway, but I'll do like the bulk of the division first, and I'll actually say if they're like add-on units. So until next time, I'll catch you all later. Bye bye.